Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on what side of the world you're on. My name is Shelly Pranic, and I see that there are more and more participants joining us. It would be great if you typed in the chat, where are you hailing from? Where are you right now? How's the weather? Thank you for joining me. In just a few seconds, Mary and Lucy will show a sponsor slide. We're very thankful to the sponsors of the EASE Summer Symposium, thankful to the EASE organizing committee of the symposium, and of course, Mary and Lucy, who are completely indispensable in making all of these sessions possible. So today, as a part of this session, we're focusing on the work of the EASE DEI Committee. We're celebrating 5 years work of this committee, a 5-year anniversary, marking a path from ideas about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we can move forward and make practical steps for change in editorial practice, publishing workflows, organizational policies, training, and of course, community engagement. And I work in the community here in Split, Croatia, and carried my experience from Philadelphia to and applying my lived experiences and my research experiences from that environment to where I'm currently working and living. So based on lived experiences of all researchers from around the world, we have really something to contribute to, whether it's peer review, whether it's to designing research studies, interpreting those results, and making conclusions that are relevant to all populations, to humans. So this is a timely moment for the DEI committee, um, given the 5-year anniversary. And we are going to use this session to kind of look back at what we've done, the journey from the earliest steps, the earliest questions about how to make the scientific enterprise more representative so that what product comes out of it is relevant for all. So when the committee was established, there was a need for a diversified scientific enterprise, whether from reporting the data to reviewing the data, all of that was totally recognizable. And it remained a challenge how to redistribute the balance of power to make voices who were previously unheard heard. So, editors, publishers, reviewers, authors, editorial board members, society leaders, professional associations, just to name a few of all of the interest holders who have a key role in establishing and initiating change, all of our voices need to be heard. So, one of the EASE webinars back in 2024, a posit was proposed by Dr. Lynn Horn as a part of a South African, she's a physician at the South African institution. And in her research, she experienced the exclusion of people's voices who mattered in research. They were systematically excluded from research on humans that involved people from certain communities. So, in the next clip, we'll hear about how Dr. Horn posits underrepresentation of certain voices in research as a research integrity problem. So, Mary, please, could you play the first clip?
So issues around collecting, analyzing, and storing and sharing data. I think, obviously research integrity requires that data is analyzed, stored, reanalyzed, shared in a manner that's trustworthy, etc. But if you have inequity and unfairness, this can undermine that.
Yes. So her words, of course, resonated and repeated what was known for a long time in the scientific community through different types of research practices, such as helicopter research and other research practices that did not involve people who the research was about. will undermine undermine the worth and the relevance of that research for those people that the research concerns. So we want to move away from a singular point of view in research where we just have one voice and we don't involve the populations that the research concerns. And that involves including diverse authors, diverse reviewers, diverse interest holders, so that the scientific record is not skewed in one direction. So conversations by Dr. Horn and, of course, other scientists sparked more dialogue about the lack of access to research resources, underrepresentation in science, and other issues such as lack of funding for open access in low-income countries, issues that were spoken about in previous sessions during the symposium. So I'd like to share my slides at this point to just kind of show how we as a committee really wanted to find out the perspectives and perceptions of EASE community interest holders. So I hope you can see my slides now. So in 2024, the EASE committee, along with, of course, the help of indispensable Mary Hodgson, developed questions that we sent out to our EASE community interest holders, as well as any other interested parties outside of EASE and involved in scientific research, publishing, editorial duties. And this set the stage for finding out what are scientists and other interest holders' perceptions of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Is it a pertinent issue? And how have different interest holders addressed diversity, inclusion, and equity in their institutions, in their research circles? So I'm going to briefly, on this slide, I'm showing the website address as well as the QR code for the article that we published back in 2024 that highlights the methodology and our findings in detail, but I will just briefly talk about the methodology and findings from this study that we did to just collect initial perceptions and kind of start to the conversation going about if it matters, if DEI matters, and how can we move forward. So with the help of Mary, we obtained email addresses to EASE committee members, EASE community members. We sent out a link through SurveyMonkey that was a link to the 24 question survey asking different questions on their perceptions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we found after we analyzed the results, the survey was available for about a month, that most of the respondents were a part of the editorial staff. They perceived DEI as extremely important. And at the point that we collected this data, sociodemographic information was not something routinely collected by our respondents. The most collected information at that time was geographic location, almost half of the respondents. Most of the respondents were experienced with over 10 years of experience at their institution or journal. And what we found really helpful as a part of the survey is that most of the participants along their journey, as they perceived diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices as important, they needed guidance some type of model policy statements or some other examples of what has already been done and what has been effective in other settings, and to apply to their settings, and so that it's relevant for their particular setting. So, um, given that it's important to assess the perception of DEI in the scientific community and the scholarly community, I want to now get to know your thoughts about using artificial intelligence or generative artificial intelligence, large language models, within the diversity, equity, inclusion sphere, within science, within scholarly publishing, and with the help of Mary, who fed some text into ChatGPT to kind of get some opinion about these three questions listed here, to see what do you think about ChatGPT's answer to these three questions. I'm going to show the answers, the output answers, in a separate document, but it would be great to hear you speak. Since the beginning of the summer symposium, we've been talking a lot about generative AI and its capabilities, its limitations. So, how, when applied to those interested in diversity, equity, inclusion, to what extent can Gen AI or LLMs advance or hinder DEI objectives in scholarly publishing? Is generative AI helpful to democratize scholarly publishing, or is it reinforcing existing inequities within the research ecosystem? And what opportunities and risks do Gen AI and large language models present for building a more equitable and inclusive scholarly publishing landscape? So this was done by Mary just yesterday. And I'm going to now share a different screen of its answers. And then I'm going to scan the participants list, because I would love to hear your opinions about, um, do your opinions match ChatGPT's responses? So now I'm going to stop sharing this particular slide, and then I'm going to now share the answers that it gave, the output, put it in a Word document. So these are ChatGPT's answers from the June 3rd prompt. So yeah, let me zoom that a little bit if that's a little bit small. So now I'm going to open the participants panel so I can see if anyone is um, chatting with me. Okay, so I'm showing here that as far as language barriers, because we know a lot of EASE authors and authors in the EASE community, they use these tools, AI tools, to help with language assistance, with writing assistance. And exactly, so Eva put in the chat, thank you, Eva, that AI assisted writing tools can reduce the language barriers for non-native English speakers. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Would it be good to generate plain language summaries? Plain language summaries can really be helpful for people with lower levels of literacy, especially around medical terminology or some kind of professional terminology. And thank you, Eva. Identifying bias is one of the things for which AI tools could help a lot. Let me just keep scrolling. Identifying bias in editorial processes. AI tools may help publishers analyze patterns in submissions, acceptance rates, reviewer selection, and citation practices to identify potential inequities. Data-driven insights can support more evidence-based DEI initiatives. Okay, and Meredith Weinhold, thank you for your comment. The issue of generative AI introducing errors into any text which is fed into it is a pervasive issue that limits its usefulness for any of these applications. Exactly. So it's going to any of these tools that if the errors are introduced or biased information is introduced, then the information that we get out can be biased. Thank you. And challenges and risks for DEI. I hope that it's also scrolling down as I scroll down. Is the next section. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks. And so large language models, yep, are trained on historical data. So this is right in line with what Meredith just said. And if the information is biased, it's going to be biased. I recently read an article on Scholarly Kitchen, and Hasib is a writer and a contributor for Scholarly Kitchen. The author, from my best recollection, she asked ChatGPT to describe in words um, structural biases that have historically affected certain populations. And she found that the language that ChatGPT used was softened to avoid harsher terminology, to not point out words that would be considered uh, I don't know, extreme in whoever is looking at the data. So the AI tool softened the labels used. And one thing about if AI is going to be describing and analyzing data from a research study, it may not pull out important concepts that are latent in the data. It may not pull out that there was discrimination. It may not pull out that there was some type of marginalization. It may not point that out if we already have data that doesn't label that, and if those data that don't provide those data are fed into the AI, then the AI will not recognize that. Um, so I see more comments. Thank you so much. Meredith really rated highly. One of the comments that the most common problem is that AI tools can detect the text written by non-native English speakers as an AI generated one. Yeah, with And Dr. Balut said that the tendency of generative AI to introduce errors into any input text is an issue that limits its utility across any of these applications. Exactly. And thank you, Eva. Yes, some historical events are already distorted in the digital space, so it could multiply the effect. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And Mary added that it's good to identify and share these risks so that people can use it appropriately. Exactly. I agree 100%. And Eva also added that wrong citations can be assigned. Um, and yeah, that's also a problem. Thank you. So on the end here, yep, and I think that it just kind of summarizes everything. They that these are just tools that we have to discern whether the information is going to be relevant, whether it's reporting without bias or with low bias. And we it can help definitely in streamlining things, but we just have to be careful, um, and just be aware of what information fed into it. Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any other comments about any of these points that that ChatGPT the ChatGPT's responses? Okay, Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to move on because we are here to highlight some past practices and some former and snippets from former webinars and other resources that concerns diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now I'm going to show another tool that the EASE Environmental and Sustainability Committee and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee jointly worked on. The Sustainable Development Goals Checklist, which was a way to help the EASE community and other scientists track their sustainability and equity journey. So this next slide shows, and I hope you see my full screen on that. This next slide shows that the QR code and the website for many of our users who may not have the ability to scan the QR code. It is on the EASE Environmental and Sustainability Committee webpage as one of their resources. You're not seeing the presenter mode. Sorry, everyone. Let me just renew that. Okay, I hope that's better. And this slide just shows the front-facing SDG checklist page that introduces the purpose of it and how you can sign up your own journal, your own institution to start your sustainability and diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. What steps has your organization or journal taken along the journey? So once you join, you have access to a dashboard where you can initiate your all of the steps that you've taken up till now concerning the SDGs. Focusing on quality education, gender equality, reduce inequalities, and partnerships for the goals. And briefly, this slide just shows EASE's journey up to the latest current data, our progress as far as fulfilling these SDGs that are on the lower slide, but also other SDGs that are included. How are we fulfilling our duties towards fulfilling these goals? And our progress has changed from baseline, which was back in 2021. And we hope that every year we see an increase. And we do also have the same data for the journal, for the ESE journal, the European Science Editing Journal. And we would just like to track our progress to show how we have been, how we are committed to filling these goals. So, the next slide, I'm going to I'm just going to switch to a clip actually about the SDG goals. So there is a webinar that EASE held about the sustainability and development goals. And Mary, would you be able to play that clip now?
EASE has created a new SDG checklist to help editors and publishers monitor and report on their progress toward achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Jo Wixon, member of EASE Council and our Environment and Sustainability Committee, presented an introduction and brief walkthrough of the checklist at the 18th EASE conference in Oslo.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I think so. Yeah, lovely. All right. So as Eva was saying, both of our surveys really revealed that the reporting on SDG progress was a significant pain point, particularly focused on smaller organizations and individual journals. So we really wanted, both from the perspective of the SDG Publishers Compact Fellows that I'm part of, but also the ENS committee, to do something to support yourselves in doing that and feeling able to achieve that. There's a lot of discussion and debate about what to measure, what to track. We've made this very practical, and we hope you'll find it useful. So I'll just take you through it. So as I say, it has an array of practical potential actions that either an organization or an individual journal might take. We've grouped them under 4 high-level themes, each with sub-areas beneath, which you'll see as I walk you through it. It walks you through the themes as you fill it in, so you'll be really sort of guided through it as you go. And it allows you to enter and save your current status. So you could treat that as a baseline if you chose. You can then come back and complete it at different times. So you might want to do this annually so that you're tracking your progress. So it really starts to help you with that reporting burden. So that's something that we hope people will find really useful. You can export your completed checklist as a PDF or even go in and edit them if you need. And as we said, we really wanted to appreciate that where the challenge lay was a combination of individual journals, but also smaller organizations. So we do have a sheet that you can fill in as an organization for your organization as a whole, or it could be for a whole of your journal portfolio if they're all following the same pathway. But for an individual journal and then the editor of that journal, you'd be better off probably, we think, using the journal level sheet. So let's go and take a look at the organizational level first. So in here, as I say, it's got those practical potential actions and they're organized into these 4 areas. So the first one is strategy. So it's that initial getting involved, getting aligned, thinking about how you're going to take action. Then it moves into an environmental section, which we've broken down different aspects of that. EDI, again, with its separate aspects. And then finally, that other facet of being a publisher and how you can contribute rather than being a responsible organization, which the first 3 largely cover, is what you can do through your own content. And so that's where we're getting at with that communicating knowledge piece on the end. So just to show you a little bit of what it looks like, what you can see is this is the page that you would come to when you first start creating a checklist as an organization. So here we're gathering a little bit of information about yourself, largely for you to keep track of the versions of your report. I should say that while we will be storing it and we will use it to learn, we're never going to be saying publisher A or journal Y said this. We would only ever use the data in an aggregated and anonymized sense, just to give a better picture across our industry or our area. So we would very much hope that you would want EASE to be able to do that and share that knowledge and progress of publishing as a whole and editing as a whole. So that's the balance that we've struck. So along the top row there and on the right, you can see it's explained. We've got a progress tracker, which will show you which step of the checklist you're on so that you can get a feel of how you're getting on as you go through it. On the left, the first thing is your organization name. So that will allow you to retrieve your previous checklists and see them all on one screen so they know they're yours, and to see your baseline, then future ones you do afterwards. You'll only see your own. No one else will be able to see yours. And then below that, we've given you a space to add a label or a reference. So you might want to call it baseline or year 0, year 1, or the month and year, whatever you'd like to use to help you keep track of the different versions you've submitted over time. And then you get into some questions, some simple demographic questions about your organization to help us see how we're doing. And as I say, those will only ever be used in an anonymized, aggregated way, but it will help us show progress and to see how much engagement we get with the checklist. So moving on to see what the actual questions look like, I've just picked one of the 4 channel areas here. So at the moment, this example is the strategy page. But they all have a similar look. So you can see the questions arranged on the screen and they're grouped by theme. So again, you've got that progress tracker bar at the top so you can always see where you are. For each question, the first piece is status for you to indicate where you've got to with it. So a yes would be if it's a one-off action and it's completed, or if it's an ongoing thing that you are doing on an ongoing basis, that would merit a yes. If you're working your way through how to do it, you're putting those early steps in, we'd recommend using in progress. If you've not started it, it would get a no until such time as you get to it. If for any reason it's simply not applicable to you, say for example, we're in the environmental bit and it's a question about the catering service, but your publisher doesn't have a catering offering in the building, then you would pick not applicable. And in that way, then you're never struggling to complete a section based on inability to do it. It's really tracking what's possible for you and allowing for the different nature of the different organizations you might be at. And then there's a space if you'd like to indicate who was responsible for doing this role. It could be the job title, it could be the person, whichever you'd like to do. And then on the right, there's a notes area. So you might want to fill in a little bit more about it. Say if you've put in progress, you might want to give a bit more detail so that in a year's time, you can remember where you'd got to when you filled this in. And then on one of the questions further down, where we ask about the focus sustainable development goals, maybe for those of you who don't know, when you sign the SDG Publishers Compact, they recommend that you select 3 focus goals. So we're very interested to see if an organization has done that, which 3 they are, or if you've picked some anyway without being a signatory, just so we can get a feel of where the focus is within our publishing cohort. So that's the organizational level. So moving on, were you to be filling this in as an individual journal, there's a separate space for this, which we've acknowledged the fact that you are going to be in quite a different position likely to a significantly sized publisher. So again, it's these same practical actions organized into the 4 channels, but rearranged to suit the circumstances of an individual journal. So you can see again, we walk through the initial strategy, that sort of early stages of getting set up, into the detail of the environmental and EDI spaces, and finally thinking about that part of our mission really to share science and drive progress on those of the world's biggest challenges. So looking at the actual pages that you would fill in for the journal level, it's a very similar structure. You'll see again, it's got that progress tracker at the top, which you'll recognize. You've got space to fill in your journal name. So again, you're building up that information about your journal first before going into answering the questions. You've got that same space for labeling it again. So you could say year 1, baseline, however you might want to label it. And then finally, you've got the questions where these fields, again, will help EASE to learn about the journals that are filling it in and enable us to say how many entities are using the checklist, how many times they've reported, and build up information and evidence of the publishing industry contributing to the goals. Then once you get into those pages that are about the detailed actions, it's a similar structure to the organizational one. So again, that status box, you've got the yes, the in progress, no, and not applicable. You're able to say, for example, if you had got an editor who was taking on the DEI role for the journal, you could indicate that was their section of the checklist where they're responsible for the actions. You've got the notes field if you want to put more information in. And also we'd recommend if you have set up a statement or a policy in any of these areas, we'd love you to put the link in so that we can start to see and learn what journals are doing. If you'd be willing to share that, that would be great piece of knowledge for us on the committee to do more with.
Thank you, Mary. So we saw Joe and Eva present the initial setup of the SDG checklist, and I showed how EASE as a committee has made progress from our baseline in 2021, and I hope that we continue on that path of fulfilling the SDG goals, not just the 4 outlined, but several others. So now, continuing with looking at snippets from our journey in EASE, recognizing sustainability as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll ask Mary to bring up a video after I just briefly introduce it. So back in 2024, editors from the Lancet Group delivered a webinar in which they articulated the importance of DEI. We couldn't articulate it enough, so we had many workshops and many sessions discussing the importance of DEI in the scientific enterprise, and speakers included the chair of the DEI committee, Anna Harita, a current and a member of the DEI committee, and former head of the DEI committee, Diana Samuel, who is the deputy editor of the Lancet Digital Health, and Zoe Mullen, the current editor-in-chief of the Lancet. Actually, maybe she just switched her position and is the former editor-in-chief of the Lancet Global Health and the Lancet Group Inclusion and Diversity Lead. So the next clip that Mary will so kindly show will provide an overview of the importance of DEI in science and the dissemination of science and reporting of science, and the importance of DEI to society as a whole. Mary, can you please play that after I stop sharing my screen?
The importance and value of advancing EDI is increasingly recognized in publishing, and it's important that the diverse global communities we live in are reflected in publishing in terms of our authors, our peer reviewers, our editorial boards and workforce, and the type of content we publish. Journals are a key part of the research ecosystem, so it's not just enough to be aware of the issues, they need to be active participants in affecting real change.
Thank you. We have another question from Arun. How do unconscious biases affect ADI efforts, and what steps can be taken to mitigate them?
It's a great question. Diana, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that we're all continuously cognizant of our own biases, and that includes people who are working or operating in the EDI space. I mean, we all have biases. So I guess from an organizational standpoint, I know that many organizations do run specific training so that people become more aware of what can constitute a bias, take some time to really reflect and understand what their own biases might be, and also how those biases can affect the people around them and also the work that they do. So I think really kind of continuously checking in with yourself, with your team, your organization, to raise awareness, to promote those trainings, and realize it's not just a once-off, it's something that we need to be doing all the time.
Thank you. Another question from Elena. Your thoughts about equity in regional journals?
That's a kind of broad question. Yeah, I think so. We've launched journals in the Americas region, in the Europe region, in the South Asia region, and the Western Pacific. I mean, one of the things that I think the Americas Journal has done particularly, and Western Pacific to an extent, is to make sure that that they are including Indigenous people in their work, because these regions particularly have a very strong Indigenous population, and so those are particularly focused, I think, for those types of journals.
What are your thoughts about including age?
Yeah, I mean, that's another really important element of diversity, and I think when we're thinking about international advisory boards, so I know that these regional journals, when they're trying to construct their international advisory boards, they're thinking about all these things. So they are making sure that there are a range of ethnicities within the region, different castes, different Indigenous statuses, but also career stage. So we I think traditionally, at the Lancet, we've seen a lot of late career stage representation on boards, and so we're now trying to think, not that they should suddenly all become young, but again, there should be a balance. That there should, whilst we have a contingent of the sort of wisdom of older generations, we also have the sort of dynamism of the new generations. coming through. So definitely age has been a consideration as well, particularly on advisory boards, I think.
That's wonderful. I just enjoy being a part of this sphere, talking about in all aspects of science, diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important. At the journal level, reviewer level, and going back to Dr. Korn's video about participants that are a part of a research study, they really enrich the interpretation of the results and the discussion sections of journals, of articles, so that those results are applicable and relevant to people who are subject of the research. So now I would just like to briefly talk about some of our latest achievements. I noticed that Lucy put in the LinkedIn link in the chat to show off and showcase our latest achievements. But my next slide will also show 3 key achievements that we've achieved in the most recent time. Let me share my screen and pull it in full presenter mode. And this slide does provide some QR codes, but Lucy's link in the chat is going to be applicable and accessible for everyone if you can't scan the QR code. So the first QR code links to 2026 activities, but Lucy's link is more relevant. The second QR code shows our awareness slide deck, which I will actually walk through. There are 2 versions of the slide deck, and this slide deck provides an applicable kind of plug-and-play resource for institutions looking to report about their DEI journey. We help you articulate your journey if you have no previous tools in which to articulate your journey. So the members of our EDI committee put together practical slides that can be used by any journal or institution. Let me now share this. There's a shorter version, and a longer version. So this shorter version is 11 slides. I'll just briefly walk through it, where relevant text can be inserted. So if you're presenting as an organization, as a journal, to your interest holders to talk about your journey, what steps are you taking to ensure that you're following or starting a journey to following DEI steps in all facets of your organization and your journal. And basic definitions are provided to clearly articulate your journey, and benefits, and all of these different steps into implementing DEI are clearly delineated, so that it's a helpful tool to help anyone unfamiliar with DEI, but they genuinely would like to incorporate principles into their workflows. This can surely, hopefully, be helpful. And there are useful links to external organizations, as well as our own toolkits and resources to help interest holders on their journey. And one of the last slides instructs any users of where this slide deck can be applicable for training, for advocacy, and other resource decision making. And their helpful pieces of contact information, some other information. And now I'll share the longer version, which is going to be, it's more of a, it provides more in-depth definitions and more use for promotional purposes. So let me share my screen on that. This is the longer version. And as I mentioned before, yes, it's a sample slide deck to introduce EASE, introduce this first slide showing the DEI committee members is a little outdated and would need to be updated, and we do plan on updating that. But it just basically shows how our committee, particularly Christina Cassateridi, was very instrumental in creating these slide decks. And we as committee members gave feedback, and she posted the slides, and of course with Mary's help. And basically these slides contain very pertinent pieces of information to help institutions, authors, researchers on their journey, on their DEI journey. And then these last slides show the shorter version. So I am just glad to be a part of an institution like EASE that recognizes there's a problem and gets together creative thinkers, critical thinkers, people who are going to tackle issues in a practical sense, get together using the best evidence, the best tools to do that, to help make change. And these tools are helping to raise awareness and help people actually articulate. If they have no words to articulate a problem, then it's helping provide that vocabulary, helping to provide those basic steps to keep someone on a path that they start in DEI. So it's a free scholarly resource. It's available on the EASE website. Eva, thank you. She's provided the links in the chat. And hopefully that will be useful for you all. So I'm going to share the other screen again to continue to talk about some current projects conducted by the members of the committee. So we also conduct research. So aside from the survey that we did where we collected the perspectives of editors and other interest holders in the EASE community, we also conducted a scoping review, which is a review of different disseminated evidence that helps answer our research question, which was what interventions, policies, and practices are currently being conducted in Europe concerning health equity. So, as I mentioned before, I am from Philadelphia, and my community where I lived, where I worked, was diverse professionally, linguistically, ethnically diverse. And bringing that with me to Europe has helped me see everything through a health equity lens. So my colleague and I, Sidra Khan from Germany, we conducted this study along with other members of the Equity and Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We conducted a study where we gathered relevant evidence to answer our question about what initiatives are being conducted in Europe concerning health equity. So are people having access to adequate care? And other questions surrounding health equity, we looked at any studies that were targeting that. And we did conduct an initial preliminary study. More studies have yet to be analyzed to gather more data, but we found a small sample of studies that, and we saw that in those studies, initiatives were mostly targeting systemic or structural healthcare access, clinical outcomes, and patient empowerment. But we saw that there was a need for the use of health equity frameworks to really guide the discussion, to be more articulate around the types of barriers. What are the specific barriers to preventing marginalized populations from achieving and attaining optimal health? So that would be a great way to increase comparability between different studies about health equity. So this, what I just described, I provided the QR code for that study, and also that and yes, and Eva, thank you. Eva so kindly placed the link in the chat. Thank you. And the recording will be available soon. Thank you, Eva. So yes, we will be hopefully reporting more about this study as we analyze more studies. So I would just like to start to end the webinar with just one more snippet from a very important landmark. 10 years since the launch of the Sex and Gender Equity in Reporting Guidelines, or SAGER for short is the acronym. And for those participants listening right now, if you're not familiar with the SAGER guidelines, they were developed in the response of the underreporting of sex and gender in research studies. And unfortunately, those are important characteristics when you want to interpret the validity, the relevance of a research design, how a study was implemented, and of course, in scientific dissemination and reporting. So we would like to pay tribute to the fact that they're of this landmark time, 10 years, and play just a brief video about some of the contributors to an interview with some of the contributors and the developers of the SAGER guidelines. And in this next snippet, EASE President Bahar Memani will speak with Shirin Hedari. And Shirin is the lead author of the guidelines and founding chair of the Gender Policy Committee, along with Salma Swaminathan. She's the head of editorial policy and research integrity for the Nature portfolio. So, Mary, can you please kindly play the video clip where they chat about that? Thank you.
Well, I would want to start the conversation by asking Shirin, like about the birthday, what was the motivation? What was the call and drive behind creating SAGER guideline? Tell us a little bit more about what brought SAGER into world, and then we can talk about what happened since then.
Thank you, Bahar. And I always reflect on that journey and, what led to, one thing led to the other that brought us here. And I always kind of see that in addition to obviously the wider recognition of SAGER and the impact it has, but also as an example of how a seed and of idea can really grow through collaboration and cooperation. Because I think really the SAGER tale is a tale of collective effort. And how it came about is that at the time, and again, the SAGER guidelines were published in 2016, but it took many, many years before that in, again, planting the seed and watering it and growing it and nurturing it. So almost 10 years before that, in 2011, when I was the editor of the Journal of the International AIDS Society, as an editor, I was quite kind of surprised of the lack of sex and gender reporting being so absent in the submitted manuscript. And as an editor, I took the liberty to introduce a gender policy at our journal. And then I thought, if I can do that, why can't other editors do that as well? And it was around the time I was actually invited and appointed as a member of the Council of EASE. And I remember very clearly at I think it was the Congress in Tallinn, when I proposed to the council to establish a gender policy committee under the EASE umbrella, and they kind of said, yes, please go ahead. And I was walking on the coffee break, literally, I was walking in the coffee break, and I didn't know many people at that time. And then I started talking with people, and I was wondering, would you like to join the gender policy committee? So it was literally how we established the initial members of the Gender Policy Committee. And again, I was very surprised that people were very interested and committed to the topic at the time when nobody in the editorial publishing field were really talking about that.
Shirin, when was that?
2011, I introduced the Gender Policy Committee in the Journal of the International AIDS Society. Mm-hmm. And 2012, I think, was the Congress in Tallinn. Yes, Mary is confirming that we're kind of gathered together. So again, it took us 8 years. No, well, yes, almost. We are more. Well, 4 years, 2, 6, for us to kind of gather the Gender Policy Committee. Again, recruiting additional members who are very gender balanced. I also had the pleasure to co-chair the Gender Policy Committee with Tom Babur, which I don't know if he's with us today. And again, initially thinking about developing a common standard, we did a lot of literature review, we did a survey, and eventually, after a number of meetings, most of them self-funded, developed the SAGER guidelines, and we can talk more about the details in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mary. So what a great time to realize that just ideas can really be very powerful and enduring. And I hope that we will continue to apply all of these guidelines and these tools in our research. So I would like to open the session to any questions. I don't know if there will be any time because there is a 2:00 session that is right after this one, and also the subsequent Council of Science Editors section after that. So I would just, before any questions, if there's time, I'd just like to thank the organizers of the Summer Symposium, especially Mary and Lucy, for your indispensable help, technical help, and emotional support too. And thank you, Lucy and Mary, for showing the slides for the next sessions. And I would just like to end with, please join us in our journey to fulfill those SDG goals, to fill our DEI goals. And I welcome with open arms, as a committee member of the DEI committee, new membership, anyone willing to contribute your great ideas, constructive criticism of what the current state of things are. All of your ideas are welcome. To ask those difficult questions, to test resources to help make publishing more inclusive. So I would thank you, everyone. And emotional support is the most important for these events. Yes, Duncan. Thank you all for your support. And I'm open to any questions, just for maybe just 1 minute or two, or comments. Wonderful being here and seeing your support. Thank you. Thank you, Stefania Romano. I'll see you later on as well in the next session. Thank you, Liliana Kumura. Mm-hmm. Oh, hi from Serbia. Yes. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you. Thank you, Shaharima. Thank you.
Meet JAMS, the editorial partner you always wished you'd had. Running a scholarly journal is serious work. Too many journals still rely on a manual process or system that was never built for how publishing actually works. JAMS is an end-to-end platform built specifically for scholarly publishers, from submission to publication, all in one place. Submission management, peer review, APC billing, journal website hosting, and real editorial guidance from publishing experts. JAMS is built for journals of every size and every budget, including a free tier if you publish up to 20 articles per year. Whether you publish 10 papers or 1,000, JAMS grows with you every step of the way. Backed by MDPI's 30 years of open access experience and a team that has helped grow over 500 journals worldwide. No lock-in, no surprises, just the support your journal actually needs. So come talk to us today, or visit jams.pub to learn more and get started for free.